On today's episode of the Cryptoverse, the free market in action. TOR, the most requested feature from the OpenBazaar community, is about to become a reality. Hardware wallets are the only way to truly store your cryptocurrency securely. Ledger provide a range of devices to suit all budgets and preferences. Check out my review of the Ledger Nano S by clicking on the link in the video description below. Hi there guys, and welcome to the latest episode of the Cryptoverse, your regular dose of news and commentary on Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies and blockchains. I am your host, Chris Coney. Today is the 16th of February 2017. Let's get into it. Let's begin with the CoinMarketCap boogie. We have DigixDAO as the big winner of the day, up 14.35%, giving a DigixDAO token a price of $9.96. Now, I heard that the DigixDAO was about to do an overhaul and release their 2.0 version, which was pretty interesting. I also heard something about them having like a debit card with a crypto-backed debit card backed by gold type of thing. So definitely some interesting stuff coming out of that project. That means that the DigixDAO is now there at 19 by market cap, and it has a value overall market cap of about $20 million. Now, close by, in 17th position by market cap, is the old Dogecoin, having lost 2.05% of its value. Now, given that that's the biggest loser of the day, it's pretty good news, right? Because if that's the biggest loser amongst the top 20, that's not so bad, is it? It means a Dogecoin is actually not worth a lot in terms of individual tokens. It's 0.0002 of a cent. And there's quite a lot of Dogecoins. There's like, 100 billion of them, making the Dogecoin blockchain have a market cap of about $22.2 million. Turning to Bitcoin wisdom for the Bitcoin price chart today then. You know, I've been thinking about this. I actually made a comment yesterday that was kind of made me dwell on this. As more and more trading becomes peer-to-peer, this sort of chart analysis is going to become less relevant. Not just because technical analysis is going to go out of date, it's just that my approach to it, using a centralized price feed for someone like Bitstamp, who are a centralized exchange, it's not going to tell the full story because peer-to-peer trades are dark. You know, how do we know how much trading activity is going on BitSquare, say? I mean, I know we can track that, but you know what I mean. If people were trading in cash hand-to-hand or local Bitcoins, again, we probably could track that, but it's not as easy as doing it directly from a price feed from an exchange. But pretty typical behavior for Bitcoin today. I've noticed that when the volume is pretty normal, that undercurrent, it has its way with the price and the price starts to creep up. That's because of the solid fundamentals that Bitcoin is based on. And all things being equal, if there wasn't so much speculation and if there wasn't so many sudden shocks in the market with news and so on, there would just be this natural and steady increase in the price over time. And that's why I draw this medium-term trend line of mine. And it's an attempt to visualize that, and it helps to see the bigger picture by filtering out, you know, those crazy shocks that I talk about. But nothing else to say about the chart today. The last time I personally bought in was 967, which wasn't the lowest it went recently, but it was a decent enough entry point for me. And yes, it's now time for the segue forecast. Someone had a right go at me in the comments yesterday, saying that this segment was getting annoying. Well, that's fair enough, but that's just one voice. I can't just go this way and that way, changing stuff based on one voice. One voice is valid, but it has to be consensus, right? I need dozens and dozens and dozens of people to say the same thing before I'll change anything about the show. And never an episode goes by where I don't get some, critical comment like that. But fortunately, the overwhelming majority of the comments I get are positive, so thank you very much for that. And there is also a way of giving feedback, critical feedback, without being an ass. So, just look into that. So anyway, on the Litecoin network here, we have SegWit. Is it active? No. What's today's number? It's 8.5%. Support. That's up 0.73% on yesterday. It means, having run this back through my formula again, we have a projected activation date of the 14th of May. And that means that Litecoin will make it. So Litecoin is going to activate if the formula that I've got here is accurately predicting the trend. Let's contrast that with the Bitcoin SegWit watch. and no movement whatsoever today. Yesterday it was 23.8, today it's 23.8. No movement whatsoever. That means that the segue activation date projection for Bitcoin is July 12th of July 2018. That's too late. That will mean that segue is not going to make it on the Bitcoin network and will be formally rejected. In terms of the news then, I have turned to Bitcoin.com once again for another Jamie Redman article that he wrote yesterday. It's entitled OpenBazaar Integrates TOR, the platform's most requested feature. So for those that don't know, TOR is an abbreviation for the Onion Router, or router if you're American. It's basically a network layer that sits on top of the internet, and it routes traffic in an anonymous way by kind of bouncing it all over the place, right? And it means you can browse the web anonymously. If you've ever seen some kind of hacker movie where a hacker's trying to hide their identity, I mean like Die Hard with a Vengeance, for example, trying to trace a phone call, and they're like, oh my god, he's in New York, oh no, he's in New Jersey, oh no, he's in Canada. It's because they bounce the call all over the place so that you can't actually retrace it back to its source. It's kind of how Tor works, but it just does it thousands and thousands and thousands of times. So it hops the thing all over the place. So it's very, very difficult to figure out, which is an individual visit to a website from where and from whom and whereabouts it originated. So that's the one. Now, organizations like WikiLeaks use Tor to receive documents from their sources so that they can't be traced. Of course, the sources want to protect themselves because they are leaking, various documents and so on, and they don't want to get themselves offed. And BitSquare, the decentralized exchange, also uses Tor so that any given transaction that you do on BitSquare, trading fiat for crypto or crypto for crypto, those transactions are only visible to you and the other person you're doing business with. And then, of course, the third-party arbitrator if anything goes wrong and you need to do a dispute. So there we go. This is the most requested feature on OpenBazaar, to add this Tor integration so that we can, do this sort of stuff privately. It says that the Bitcoin-powered marketplace has finally merged Tor integration into the OpenBazaar platform, adding a long-awaited layer of privacy to the program. Now, I could do with a little bit of help here. I believe privacy is important, right? Unless you're under suspicion of committing some crime, I don't believe any government agency, or anyone for that matter, should have the option of just arbitrarily monitoring what you're doing online, right? You have to be under suspicion first. So if they have cause, like I say, if they have cause to do it, fine, but there needs to be a legal process in place that they have to go through to get permission, to get a warrant, just to make sure that that power is not abused, right? If it's carte blanche, it's going to be abused because it's just, are you sat bored in the intelligence agency's office and you decide, you're on a break or you're just bored, there's nothing to do. Yeah, I'll just have a snoop on someone's email just for fun, right? You can't be having that kind of thing, right? So my question is, what's the primary benefit of using Tor on OpenBazaar for people who want to operate a legitimate business on there? That's a genuine question. Tell me your input on that in the comments below, please. Anyway, moving on, it says OpenBazaar is a different approach to e-commerce through creating a decentralized peer-to-peer marketplace that is censorship resistant. Now, this is why I love the whole crypto community, because it creates the environment for us to explore a whole range of moral and philosophical concepts, which we would never had context before, right? How do you have a philosophical conversation without some real world or real life situation to apply it to? So OpenBazaar kind of intersects with a whole bunch of these things. So let's say someone uses OpenBazaar via Tor, right? They then have this choice to hide those transactions from their business and accounting records and thereby evade tax, which is obviously illegal, right? So that's one aspect to it. So that will get into the discussion of, government and shrinking government, and is tax morally correct and all that. That's one philosophical conversation that we could have. But there's another aspect here. The other aspect is like the censorship resistant side of things. So this is still a legal issue, but it's a question of, should we be allowed to sell this and that? And this question has a much wider reach. On one end of the scale, I'm sure most of us would agree. Should contract killers be able to offer their services on there? I would hope most of us would answer no, that should not be allowed. And then on the other end of the scale, I think we would also agree. Should a flower delivery service be allowed to offer their services on there? Well, I hope most of us would answer yes, that should be allowed, right? Now, the further we go towards the middle, the more divided our opinions. It's not so cut and dry. And actually, in the center. I'm sure it's like 50-50 on most topics. And this is the very crux of the matter. This is actually what the debate is about. Who gets to decide ultimately? Right? If the community is split down the middle, who gets to decide which way it goes? Maybe it's not either or. Maybe the two groups form their own communities and then just go on their merry way rather than having a universal rule like that. Now, the bottom line here, though, is that OB1, which is the company that is developing the software, they're software developers, right? They are not charged with writing the laws, enforcing the laws, or governing their users in any way. Right? They're a technology company, and hence it's not their job to inject legal or political bias into their product. That's just not the way it works. So I guess I've just ultimately answered my own question there. In the free market, we, the providers, simply respond to the demands of our customers, right? A whole bunch of people asked for TOR integration, and OB1 gave it to them. End of story. And that is where OB1's responsibility begins and ends, doesn't it? So anyway, let's move on to the bit here where it talks about OpenBazaar and TOR's relationship begins on Valentine's Day. It says one Redditor writes, quote, "Bring on the illegal commerce," quote, close quote, while others were not so sure they wanted illicit activity coming to the network. Well, we've just dealt with this. By default, all activity must be allowed by the technology itself. And the same goes for the internet. The internet must remain morally and politically neutral. Then additional layers can be built on top of that to cater for specific groups and specific rules, right? China can build their great firewall. They can block certain geographies and whatever they want to do, right? That's their prerogative. But for those countries who want a freer internet, this should be available and not have any restrictions built into the technology itself, right? Now, in terms of OpenBazaar, they already have a setting in the settings of OpenBazaar to turn off or hide adult and potentially offensive listings, right? And I have no doubt there will be third-party filters and apps built on top of OpenBazaar by third-party developers that will allow you to see the marketplace through a specific lens, like thereby hiding what you personally don't want to see, right? And it would be completely a personalized experience, just kind of how the internet is. You go to YouTube and you're logged in, I see a whole different listing of recommendations to what you would. And I only see a fraction of what's available on YouTube because of my preferences and my settings and all this sort of stuff, right? So that's cool. I'm sure there are stuff that I would find offensive on YouTube, but that doesn't mean YouTube should outlaw it. So let's move on to this next bit. It says, it's a quote from Pacia, who's one of the developers for OpenBazaar. He says, "We want to have a security audit for both OpenBazaar and IPFS. Until we do that, I wouldn't recommend people using it for anything other than testing." So IPFS, what's that? Interplanetary File System. So hold your horses here. This is just an announcement we're talking about here. They've completed the code, but it's not ready for us, users, the average user, to run out and download it and start using it, right? It's available, but they said here they don't really want people using it for everyday use until they've done a security audit. So bear that in mind. And then it closes off here. Pacia tells the Bitcoin.com team that he could use a hand developing the platform. Quote, "We are currently looking for a JavaScript developer to help make the user experience or the user interface work and go faster if anyone is interested." Close quote. So what is most curious about the OB1 company is that they have funding from an outside investor. I find that very interesting. So if you're a JavaScript developer, like it says here, if you have some user interface design experience, then you may want to consider going to work for OB1. At the end of the day, though, in the free market, if there are enough people who want something, it's only a matter of time before someone gives it to them. So if OB1 didn't start building a decentralized and soon to be private free marketplace online, then someone else would. So thanks for joining me today, guys. If you liked this episode, hit the like button. If you disliked it, hit the dislike button. Please leave me a comment below with some feedback and get subscribed. And please support the Cryptoverse and boost cryptocurrency adoption by going to cryptoversity.com/podcast and becoming a patron. From a few dollars a month, you can secure Cryptoversity's future, get unlimited access to all Cryptoversity courses, and access a private patrons-only chat group where you get direct access to me. That is all for today, guys. I will be back tomorrow with another episode of the Cryptoverse. So until then, it's me, Chris Coney, saying bye for now.